You're watching because you're trying to figure out whether a wine fridge is really worth the space on your counter, the electricity bill, and the hassle of setting it up. You want something that will keep your bottles at the right temperature night after night, that looks decent in the kitchen, and that won't feel like a money-draining experiment. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The truth is, a lot of people buy a cooler based on a glossy photo or a long list of specs, only to discover that the unit is too noisy for a home bar, the door doesn't close properly, or the interior layout makes it impossible to store the shapes of the bottles you actually own. Let's dig into the Vushine 24-inch wine fridge and see if it solves those everyday headaches or adds new ones. First off, the Vushine is a freestanding, glass door unit that measures just under 2 feet wide, so it can sit on a kitchen counter, a bar shelf, or even a dedicated alcove. The front vent design means the intake and exhaust are on the door side rather than the back, which can be a blessing if you're placing the fridge up against a wall. In real homes that kind of placement is common. You open the door, a thin strip of air slips out, and you don't have to worry about a blocked rear vent causing the compressor to work harder. The downside is you need a few inches of clearance in front of the fridge so the door can open fully, otherwise you'll end up tapping the wall every time you reach for that bottle of Pinot you promised yourself you'd finish this weekend. Capacity is often the first thing people ask about. This model claims 158 bottles, and that's not just a marketing number. With removable shelves, you can actually reconfigure the interior to fit those oddly shaped magnums, half bottles, or those sleek, narrow champagne flutes that take up more vertical space. In my own kitchen, I ended up stacking 3 rows of standard 750 milliliters bottles and still had room for a handful of larger formats. If you're a casual collector with a few dozen bottles and occasional guests, that flexibility feels like a genuine win. However, if you're aiming for a serious cellar of 300+ bottles, you'll outgrow this unit quickly and might be better off looking at a dual-zone, larger capacity system. The cooling system is another practical point. Vushine uses an advanced and energy-efficient compressor that the brand says is quick to reach the set temperature. In practice, when I set the digital touch control to 55°F, the sweet spot for most reds, the internal thermometer stabilized within a couple of hours. The temperature stays steady, and the compressor cycles quietly enough that you can leave it on during a dinner party without anyone noticing. For people who keep the unit running 24/7, that low noise profile is a real comfort. The trade-off is that, like most single-zone compressors, the unit isn't designed to hold drastically different temperatures for reds and whites simultaneously. If you need a precise 45°F for sparkling wines and 58°F for reds at the same time, you'll have to compromise or buy a dual-zone model. Energy use is often hidden until the electric bill arrives. Because the compressor is marketed as efficient, the fridge does draw less power than an older, larger unit, but it's still a dedicated appliance that runs continuously. In a typical household, you might see an extra 10 to 15 kilowatt-hours per month, roughly $1 or $2 in most regions. If you're very budget-conscious, that's something to factor in. On the other hand, the peace of mind that your wines won't suffer from temperature swings usually outweighs that modest increase for most enthusiasts. Design-wise, the glass door looks sleek enough to sit on a bar alongside a cocktail shaker. The front vent doubles as a subtle visual cue that the unit is actively cooling, which some people find reassuring. The digital touch panel is intuitive. A quick tap raises or lowers the temperature, and the display glows softly, so you can see it in dim lighting without turning on the kitchen lights. A minor gripe is that the touch panel can be a little sensitive. A light tap might not register, and you end up tapping twice. It's not a deal breaker, but it's worth knowing before you start fiddling with it in the middle of a party. Reliability and support matter, especially if you're putting a few $100s into a piece of kitchen equipment. Vushine offers a 12-month product support window, which is fairly standard for this price range. In the 10 reviews that contributed to its 4.3-star average, most owners didn't report any major failures within the first year. That suggests the unit holds up under normal home use, but it also means you won't have a long-term warranty that some premium brands provide. If you're the type who wants a safety net for 5 years, you might look at a higher-priced competitor that includes extended coverage. So, who should buy the Vushine 24-inch wine fridge? If